Hello and welcome to the solution video to my AQA 2024 practice paper 2. Before watching this video, I'd encourage you to read the disclaimer that's on the front of the paper. I've put a lot of effort into analysing the past papers and of course what topics already came up in paper 1, but this offers no guarantees at all. There are many topics that I couldn't fit into this paper that may well appear, so I'd remind you to revise all topics as technically anything could still be asked. It is definitely best to try the paper before watching this video. You can find a link to the paper in this video's description. And now let's have a look at the solutions. In this first question, we need to write down the value of the digit 4 in the number 3421. When we write out this number, the number 4 is in the hundreds place. This means it represents 400, so 400 is the answer to the question. In this question, we need to write down the name of the line AB. We're told that line AB goes through the centre of the circle, so it must be a diameter. In this question, we need to write 0.13 as a fraction. When we look at the number 0.13, the 1 is in the tenths place. The 3 is in the hundredths place. This means we can write it as 13 hundredths, or 13 over 100. In this question, we need to write down all of the factors of 30. Factors of a number are numbers that divide into it without a remainder. So we're looking for pairs of numbers that multiply to make 30. We've got 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, and 5 and 6. So the factors of 30 are 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10, 15, and 30. In the first part of this question, we need to do b multiplied by b multiplied by b multiplied by b. That would give us b to the power 4. In the second part of the question, we need to solve this equation. We're going to do that by dividing both sides by 8. On the left-hand side, this will give us y, and on the right-hand side, 24 divided by 8 is 3. So y equals 3. And for the final part of the question, we need to solve this equation. We'll do this one by multiplying both sides by 3. On the left, we'd get x, and on the right, 12 multiplied by 3 is 36. So the answer is x equals 36. In this question, we're told that a bag contains 40 counters. 18 of them are red, and 3 of them are blue, and the rest are green. We need to work out the probability that a counter that's selected is green. To do this, we need to know how many green counters there are. Well, we know there are 40 counters in total, so if we subtract the number of red counters, which is 18, and subtract the number of blue counters, which is 3, we end up with 19, which is the number of green counters. Now to write this as a probability, we write the number of green counters, 19, over the total number of counters, which is 40. In this question, we need to work out how many minutes there are in 1/5 of 2 hours. Let's convert 2 hours into minutes first. 1 hour is 60 minutes, so for 2 hours, we need to do 2 lots of 60 minutes. 60 times 2 is 120. Then we need to do 1/5 of this. Now you could do this by doing 1/5 multiplied by 120 minutes, which gives you 24. Or you could do 120 minutes divided by 5, which will also give you 24. So the answer to this question is 24 minutes. In this question, we're told that there are n students in a classroom. One of the students leaves to visit reception. We need to write an expression in terms of n for the number of students that are now in the classroom. Well, if there were 10 students in the classroom and 1 left, we'd subtract 1. So we'd have 10 subtract 1. If there were 15 students in the classroom, we'd do 15 subtract 1. So it's the number of students, however many there are, subtract 1. But the number of students is actually just n, so it's n subtract 1. In this question, we're told that the sides of each of the shapes in the table are equal in length. We need to name the shapes first of all. So for the one in the middle there, we have a 4-sided shape where all of the sides are the same length. It's clearly not a square, so this one is a rhombus. You should not call this a diamond. The one at the bottom has 5 sides, and they're all the same length, so we would call this a regular pentagon. Next, we need to write in the number of lines of symmetry. We can see for the square they've told us it's 4. A line of symmetry is a line that you can draw over the shape, where if you folded along that line, the shape would match to itself perfectly. For a square, we have a line of symmetry straight down the middle here, also one horizontally here, and 2 diagonal ones here and here. For the rhombus though, there's only 2. There's one down here, and one across here. So we write down 2. For the pentagon, there are actually 5. We could draw a line from any of the corners to the middle of the opposite side. So this one here, but there's also this one, this one, this one, and this one. So we write down 5. In this question, we need to write the ratio 17 to 2 in the form n to 1. This just means the number on the right of the ratio must be 1. How could we turn this 2 into a 1? Well, we'd just divide it by 2. So we can also divide the 17 by 2, and you can use your calculator for this. It will give you the answer 8.5. So the answer to this question is 8.5 to 1. In this question, we have a bank statement. We read bank statements going horizontally one row at a time. So if we look at the top row here, this one says the starting balance, but unfortunately we don't know that. On the next row, we have an energy bill, and you can see we have a number in the debit column. Debits are things that come out of the bank account, usually things you have to pay, like bills. So we had a starting balance, we then paid the debit, which was £192.53, and our new balance was £1,419.09. This means we can work out the original balance by taking the new balance and adding that debit back in. This will give us £1,611.62, so this must have been the balance before we removed the debit. Now if we move on to the next row, we've got a salary. This is a credit, so it's money that comes into the account. The balance was £1,419.09, but we're going to be paid our salary, so we can add that to the bank balance. This gives you a new balance of £3,252.42. Finally, in the last row, we have a phone bill, which is a debit, but we don't know how much that debit was, but we do know the new balance. So to work out the value of the debit, we can just subtract the balances. So if we take the original balance and subtract the new balance, we find that the debit was £29.99. In this question, we need to work out Claire's pay per hour after she's had a pay rise. We're told that she earns £183 for 15 hours of work. So we can work out the hourly pay by doing 183 divided by 15, which gives you £12.20. Now Claire is going to receive a pay rise of 5%, so we're going to work out 5% of this and then add it on. To find 5%, we're going to find the multiplier for 5%. We can do this by just dividing 5 by 100, which is 0.05. This means we can multiply any number by 0.05 and it will tell us 5% of it. So let's use it to find 5% of £12.20. So £12.20 times 0.05 is 61 pence. So we know that Claire is going to receive a pay rise of 61 pence for each hour. So we can add that on to the £12.20 and we get her new pay of £12.81, which is the answer to the question. In this question we have a rectangle and a square and we're told they have the same perimeter, and we're asked to work out the area of the square. Well, if we look at the rectangle first, we can calculate its perimeter. We do know that the side on the top will be the same as the side on the bottom, so this is also 8. The side on the left will be the same as the side on the right, so this one's also 3. So we can find the perimeter by adding all of these sides together. This gives you a total perimeter of 22. But remember, this is also the perimeter of the square because they have the same perimeter. But a square is special because all of the sides are the same length. So we can divide 22 by 4, which gives you 5.5. So all of the sides of the square must be 5.5. Now to find the area of the square, you just multiply its base by its height. So 5.5 times 5.5, which is 30.25, and the answer to the question. In this question, we need to write these in order of size, starting with the smallest. The easiest way to do this is to convert them all to decimals. To convert 57% to a decimal, you divide it by 100. This is 0.57. You can convert a fraction to a decimal on your calculator by simply typing it in and pressing the SD button, or possibly if you have a new calculator, pressing a format button. This will give you 0.15. And the last two are already decimals. If we now write out the numbers vertically like this, and for the final number you can see it's 0.4, but we want them all to have the same number of digits, so I'm going to add an extra 0 here, so 0.40, which is still the same number. Then we look at the leftmost digit and compare them to see which one's smallest. But unfortunately they're all the same, so at the moment we can't tell. So we move along to the next column, and here we can see they're all different, so this will tell us the order of size. The smallest number in this column will be the smallest number, and that's a 0 for 0.06. So that is the smallest number, so it goes first. The next smallest number is the 1 for 0.15, but in the question that was given as 3/20, so that's what we'll write on the answer line. The next smallest is the 4 for 0.4, so that one comes next. And the final number is 0.57, which in the question was 57%. In the first part of this question, we need to write down the modal number of detentions. To find the mode from a diagram like this, you're looking for the one with the highest frequency, which is the one with the tallest line, and that's this one here, which corresponds to 0 detentions. So the modal number of detentions is 0 detentions. In the second part of the question, we need to work out the total number of detentions for all of the students. Let's do it one line at a time. So we have this first line here where 10 students had 0 detentions. That's still a total of 0 detentions. For this next line here, we have 5 students that all had 1 detention. So if we do 5 times 1, that's a total of 5 detentions. For the next line here, we have 3 students that had 2 detentions each. 3 times 2 is 6, so that's 6 more detentions. For the next line, there's 1 student who has 3 detentions, so let's add 3 more. And the final line, 1 student had 4 detentions, so 4 more detentions. If you add up all of these, you get 18 detentions in total, which is the answer to the question. In this question, we're told that 240 people visit the cinema, and 3/8 of those were adults and the rest were children. So first of all, let's work out how many were adults. We can do this by doing 3/8 of 240, which on your calculator you can write as 3/8 multiplied by 240, and this will give you 90. So there are 90 adults, we can add that to the frequency tree. Now if we know that 240 people visited and 90 of them are adults, the rest must be children. So if we do 240 subtract 90, we find there are 150 children. So we can write that onto the frequency tree as well. Now we need to work out how many of those enjoyed the film or did not enjoy the film. And we're told that 70% of the adults did enjoy the film, and so did 90% of the children. So we need to work out 70% of the 90 adults. We can do this by writing 70% as a multiplier. We get this by doing 70 divided by 100, which is 0.7. So if we multiply the 0.7 by 90, we end up with the number of adults who enjoyed the film, which is 63. So let's add this to the frequency tree. And if there were 90 adults in total and 63 enjoyed the film, the rest didn't. So we can do 90 take away 63, which is 27. So 27 of them did not enjoy the film. Now if we do the same process but for children, we want to write 90% as a multiplier, so we do 90 divided by 100, which is 0.9. We can then multiply 150 children by 0.9, which gives you 135 children that did enjoy the film. The rest must not have enjoyed the film, so we do 150 subtract 135, which is 15. And that's the frequency tree completed. For the final part of the question, one of the visitors is selected at random, and we need to work out the probability that the winner was an adult who enjoyed the film. Well, we can see the number of adults that enjoyed the film was 63. We need to write this as a fraction of all of the people that we could have selected from, which is all of the people, which is 240. So the answer is 63 over 240. In this question, Isaac claims that drink B has a higher proportion of sugar, and we need to decide if he's correct or not. Now the thing that makes this question difficult is they have different amounts of sugar and different amounts of drink in total, so it's hard to compare them. Instead, we're going to work out how many grams of sugar would be in just 1 milliliter. So for drink A, we would do the number of grams of sugar, which is 35, divide by the number of milliliters, which is 330. If you do this on your calculator, you'll get this number here. This means that every 1 milliliter of drink has 0.10606 and so on grams of sugar. If we do the same idea for drink B, we can then compare them. So 55 grams of sugar divided by 500 milliliters gives you 0.11. So in drink B, every 1 milliliter of drink has 0.11 grams of sugar. Now we just need to choose the one that's got a higher proportion, which will be the one with a higher number, which is the second one because 0.11 is greater than 0.10, 6060 and so on. This means that drink B did in fact have a higher proportion of sugar, so Isaac was correct, so we're going to tick yes. In this question, we need to draw a table of values to help us plot this graph. We're going to have values for x and values for y. The values for x are actually given in the question. They tell us to go from -4 to 2. So let's put into our table -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1 and 2. Now we need to work out the y values using this equation here. So y equals 1/2x plus 5. We're going to start with x equal to 0, so we just replace the x with a 0. So we need to do half of 0 plus 5, which is 5. Then we'll move on to when x equals 1, so we just replace that x with a 1. So it's now half of 1 plus 5, which is 5.5. Then we move on to x equals 2, so we replace the x with a 2, so it's half of 2 plus 5, which gives you 6. Now let's go back and do the negative numbers. So for x equals -1, half of -1 plus 5, which is 4.5. Then x equals -2, which will give you 4. Then x equals -3, which will give you 3.5. And x equals -4 will give you 3. Remember, you can type all of those straight into your calculator. Now we need to plot these as coordinates. So the first pair of coordinates is -4 with 3. That point goes here. Then -3, 3.5, which goes here. -2, 4, which goes here. -1, 4.5, which goes here. 0, 5, which goes here. 1, 5.5, which goes here. And 2, 6, which goes here. We then connect these up with a straight line, and that's the question finished. In this question, we need to work out the area of a circle that has a radius of 7 centimeters. The area of a circle is worked out using the formula pi times r squared, where r is the radius. We know the radius of this circle is 7, so we do pi times 7 squared. If you type this into your calculator, you'll get this answer here. This question says to give your answer to 1 decimal place, so we would round this off to 153.9. In this question, we have a car that's travelling at a constant speed of 40 miles per hour, and we need to work out how far it will travel in 3.5 hours. To do this, we're going to use the link between speed, distance, and time. There's a formula which says speed equals distance divided by time. In this question, we're working out how far the car travels, which is a distance, so we need this to be distance equals. We can get that by multiplying both sides of this equation by time. On the left, you'll have speed times time. On the right, the times will cancel, so you just have distance. So distance is equal to speed multiplied by time. We can now just substitute in the numbers from the question. The speed is 40, and the time is 3.5, which we should write as 3.5. So 40 multiplied by 3.5 is 140. So the answer to the question is 140 miles. For this question, we need to match some descriptions to the numbers on the right-hand side. Let's start with the square numbers. You get a square number when you multiply a number by itself, like 1 times 1, which is 1, 2 times 2, which is 4, 3 times 3, which is 9, and so on. Now looking at the numbers we have, we need to keep going here. 4 times 4 is 16, and 5 times 5 is 25, and that one is in the list, so the square number is 25. Now for cube numbers, you multiply it by itself and then itself once more. So 1 times 1 times 1 again, which is 1. Then we have 2 times 2 times 2 again, which is 8. And 3 times 3 times 3 again, which is 27. So looking at the list, we have 27, so that's the cube number. Then we move on to prime numbers. Prime numbers are numbers that have 2 factors. So 2 is a prime number because its factors are 1 and 2. 3 is a prime number because its factors are 1 and 3. So it's 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, and the one in our list, 23. So 23 is the prime number. And finally, we need to find a triangular number. I like to think of the triangular numbers like the red balls on a snooker table. So the first triangular number is actually just 1, where we think of 1 ball. Then we add a second row of balls, so 2 more, and if you count up all of those, there are 3, so 3 is the next triangular number. Then if we add another row, we add 3 more, so if you count up all of those, there are 6. Then if we add the next row, there's 4 more, and if you count up all of those, there's 10. Then 5 more for the next row, that makes 15. 6 more for the next row, that makes 21. And 7 more for the next row makes 28. And 28 is in our list, so 28 is the answer. In this question, we need to rotate triangle A 180 degrees about the point 0,1. To do this, I would recommend you use tracing paper. Trace around the shape A and mark on that point 0,1. Then place your pen or pencil onto the point 0,1 and turn the tracing paper 180 degrees, which is half a turn. Then where this shape finishes up is where we need to draw it, so this must be where we draw the triangle B. For the second part of the question, we need to reflect triangle A in the line x equals 1. The line x equals 1 is a line that goes through x equals 1 on the x-axis, which is here. So we just need to reflect shape A in this line. We're going to do this one point at a time. Let's start with a point at the top. We want to count how many squares it is from this point to the mirror line, which we will find is 1, 2, 3, 4. So we go 4 squares past the mirror line. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do the point at the bottom. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 as well. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4 past it. For the final point though, it's 6 squares away. so we go 6 squares past it. And this is where the reflection goes, so this must be triangle C. In the first part of this question, we need to find the nth term of the sequence. We're going to start by finding the difference between each of the terms. For this sequence, we add 5. This means the answer must be based on the 5n sequence. The sequence for 5n is just the 5 times table, so 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on. How do we get from 5n to our sequence? Well, you always take away 3. 5 take away 3 is 2, 10 take away 3 is 7, and so on. So the nth term is 5n take away 3. For the second part, we need to write down the first term that's greater than 100. So if we take the sequence, it goes 2, 7, 12, 17, we can just keep adding 5. It will go 22, 27, 32, 37, 42, 47, 52, 57, 62, 67, 72, 77, 82, 87, 92, 97, and then 102. So the answer is 102. In this question, we need to divide two numbers given in standard form. We're going to start by doing 1.9 divided by 7.6. If you do this with your calculator, you'll see it gives 0.25. Then we need to do 10 to the 600 divided by 10 to the 25, but your calculator probably won't be able to cope with this. Instead, we're going to use a law of indices. When we divide like this, we subtract the powers. So 600 subtract 25, which is 575. So the power of 10 is 10 to the power 575. The question does say to give your answer in standard form though, and this is not in standard form, because that first number needs to be between 1 and 10. We can correct this though by multiplying 0.25 by 10, which would give you 2.5. But to keep the number the same, we also need to divide this by 10. If you divide it by 10, its power will reduce by 1, since there's 1 fewer 10s. So it's 10 to the power 574. This is now in standard form, so it's the answer to the question. In this question, we need to find the equation of the straight line. We're going to start by finding two nice points on the line. I'm going to go for this one here at 1, 1, and this one here at 3, 7. We then draw a gradient triangle between the points. We want to work out the change in x and the change in y. The change in x is the horizontal distance between 1 and 3, which is 2. The change in x is the vertical distance between 1 and 7, which is 6. We can now find the gradient by doing the change in y, which is 6, over the change in x, which is 2. 6 over 2 is like 6 divided by 2, which is 3. Now we have the gradient, we also need the y-intercept, which is where the line crosses the y-axis. You can see here that's negative 2. Now if we write down the general equation of a line, y equals mx plus c. M is just the gradient and c is the intercept. We said the gradient was 3, so it's y equals 3x, and the intercept was negative 2, so subtract 2. And that's the answer to the question. In this question, we need to show that the triangle is a right-angled triangle. You should know that the angles in a triangle always add up to 180 degrees. So let's add up these angles. The first angle is 3x subtract 11. If we add the second angle, that's 5x minus 20. And the third angle is x plus 13. If we add up all of these angles, we must get 180. On the left-hand side here, we can simplify. We have 3x plus 5x plus 1x, which is 9x. We can also simplify negative 11, subtract 20, plus 13, and you can even use your calculator if you wish. That gives you subtract 18. And the right-hand side is 180. We now have an equation to solve. We can add 18 to both sides. On the left, the 18s will cancel, so we have 9x. On the right, when you add 18 to 180, you get 198. Now if we just divide both sides by 9, we get x, and 198 divided by 9 is 22. So we now know the value of x, it is 22. We can substitute 22 into all of the angles to work out their size. If you substitute 22 into this one, you get 5 lots of x, or 5 lots of 22, subtract 20. If you do this with your calculator, you'll see it gives 90. 90 degrees is a right angle, so we can say that angle ABC equals 90 degrees. And if the triangle has a right angle, then the triangle must be a right angled triangle. In this question, we're told that Fiona's house was worth £250,000 in 2024. Now, Fiona is going to assume that the house prices will increase by 2% each year for the next 3 years. And we're going to use her assumption to work out how much Fiona's house would be worth in 2027. So if we start with the value of Fiona's house in 2024, and we need to increase this by 2% each year. So we're going to need to work out our multiplier for a 2% increase. We can work this out by doing 100% plus 2%, which is 102%, and then dividing this by 100. This gives you 1.02. So to increase it by 2%, we multiply it by 1.02. But we're going to multiply it by 1.02 each year, and there are 3 years, so we do this to the power 3. If you type this into your calculator, you'll get the answer to the question, which is 265,302. In this question, we're going to use trigonometry to find the size of angle x. We're going to start by labelling the triangle. The side opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse. The side opposite the angle in the question is the opposite, and the remaining side is the adjacent. For this question, we have the hypotenuse and the opposite, but we don't have the adjacent, so we won't need that in this question. If we write down SOHCAHTOA, the one that contains the opposite and the hypotenuse is sine. So we can write down that sine of the angle, or sine of x, is equal to the opposite, which is 15, over the hypotenuse, which is 18. We can now find x by doing the inverse sine, so x will equal the inverse sine of 15 over 18. If you type this into your calculator, you'll get x equal to this number here. Then if we round this off to a sensible degree of accuracy, perhaps 1 decimal place, we'll get 56.4. In this question, we need to expand and simplify these double brackets. We can start by doing x multiplied by x, which is x squared. Then x multiplied by negative 6, which is negative 6x. A positive 4 multiplied by x is positive 4x. And a positive 4 multiplied by a negative 6 is negative 24. We can then simplify these terms here, so negative 6x plus 4x, which is negative 2x. So we have x squared, then the negative 2x, then negative 24. In this question, we need to make u the subject. At the moment, m is the subject because it's the letter that's all by itself. We're going to start by subtracting p from both sides. If you subtract p from the left, we have m already there, and we're going to subtract p, so it's m subtract p. On the right, though, the p's will cancel, so we're just left with 2u. Now we can divide both sides by 2. On the left, we have m subtract p, but we're dividing it by 2, and on the right, 2u divided by 2 is just 1u. Now that u is on its own, it's considered the subject, so u is equal to m minus p over 2. Thank you for watching this video, I hope you found it useful. Here are some rough grade boundaries, but remember we won't know the grade boundaries until all of the exams are done. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future videos, and I'd really appreciate it if you liked, commented, or shared this video with your friends.